it's day 13 of 30 of sharing some thoughts while I build my AI startup. And there's two things I want to talk about today. One is sort of the ebb and flow of building, and the other is a bit of an epiphany that I had this evening. And the two are quite related. So earlier today, I was super focused, I had a good plan, and things just weren't going my way. Dots weren't connecting in the way that I wanted them to. Everything felt like it was moving so slow, and there was so much effort to get to the things that I wanted, but it was just not coming together. And at times like that really can be quite frustrating. And sometimes it's good just to step away and speak to other people and try and get some ideas from elsewhere. And I did exactly that. And then that just led to this snowball epiphany. And I'll talk about what that is here because I think it's quite an interesting implication on how we might set things up. But it just is a reminder to sometimes it's okay to step away. It's okay to speak to other people, get your mind off of what the immediate task is, and then subconsciously you start connecting dots in ways that you never thought of. And I did exactly that, and I had this epiphany around what if we are able to create what I'm calling in my head dynamic prompts throughout the workflow that we're building. And I'll explain what that is, and I'll do that by contrasting it with the current approach and the sort of traditional approach for a lot of things like this, which is we get assets or we get content. That could be inputs from users, it could be all sorts of different things. We then have some prompt, let's just call that P1 here, and that is usually the same for every time you message the model or every time you use the tool or any time you say speak to ChatGPT or something like that. And then what happens is that you get an output based on, that prompt would be part of a process that then feeds into creating an output. And then that output is what you get. So you have your starting stuff, which is changing all the time. And then you prompt to create the output, and the process of creating the output, these two things sort of stay the same. Now, one of the things that these models can do now, pretty recently, is the last couple of months, is add on reasoning. So they can add thinking essentially to what they're doing, and what that allows the model to do is sort of explain its thought process, and then that gives additional context before it goes into creating the output. And that's super useful for doing complex tasks. Now, I was thinking it's quite difficult to control that thinking process. You can do it a little bit, but it's hard to get it in a really systematic way. And that's sort of where we were thinking of how we could really improve the quality of the outputs that we're looking at. So we're thinking about using dynamic prompts. So this starting process of getting content is quite similar. But then instead of passing that on to something that's static, we do have a static process, but this is P2, and this is going to be build the prompt. So this is going to change based on what we're getting here. So then the output of this is a dynamic prompt. And then what we're going to do is take that dynamic prompt and feed it into that same create output step. And this allows us to do things that are really cool, because now that context here is changing based on what we're getting up here, not only from a information perspective, but also from an instructions perspective. And that allows us to get a much higher quality output at the end. And of course, we need to do a bunch of testing and things on this to make sure that that is the case. But from some initial looks at it today, I think that this could be a good path to getting us to something that's really slick on the output. That's it. I'll check in tomorrow.